this ECB interest rate decision webinar. Now, as usual, this is Mark Paz from FX Instructor, and we're here to talk about this particular ECB meeting, potential implications for us, what are we supposed to look out for, and well, what would be its impact for the market. The actual interest rate decision will be in about 30 minutes time. We do not expect the ECB to cut rates further. Remember that the last time we had an ECB meeting, what did they do? They cut rates again, further into negative territory. And the ECB also said, hey, you know what? We probably will not be cutting rates any further. We have seen the limits of rate cuts, and if there's anything that's going to be done next, it will be perhaps some form of quantitative easing. So in today's meeting, a rate cut is no longer expected. What people are watching out for would be, what are the intentions of the ECB with respect to its TLTRO program, or the targeted LTRO? Why? Because when they did the first round of TLTRO in the middle of September, I would say that TLTRO was a failure. The ECB made available about 400 billion euros. Market was forecasting 150 billion euros of that targeted long-term refinancing would probably be taken up by the banks. But eventually, European banks only borrowed 82.6 billion. So you can see the numbers. ECB made available free money, cheap money at least 400 billion. Market was already expecting that it's probably going to fall short of that, that the take-up would be about 150. The actual take-up, 82.6. So from this, what was the implication for the ECB? This TLTRO failure, along with the fact that you now have negative interest rates from the ECB, is telling the ECB that, hey, to fix the problem or the problems in the Eurozone seems to be not just an issue of availability of money. Okay, so it's not that people are having a hard time, businesses are having a hard time looking for funding. If that were the case, then the take-up of that TLTRO should have been around 400 billion. Should have been more than what the ECB is willing to is offering. But at 82.6, it tells us not everyone's really confident about doing business. Not everyone is really confident about expanding operations. So that told the ECB, or at least that's a signal to the ECB, that they have to adopt something else, that they have to do something else. Now, what would that be? About last week, or a week or two ago, we actually heard from Mario Draghi. And Mario Draghi was saying, you know, I want to expand the balance sheet of the ECB. You know, when you say that a central bank wants to expand its balance sheet, the central bank is basically saying, let me turn on my printing press. So Mario Draghi wants to expand the balance sheet of the ECB by about 1 trillion euros. Okay, 1 trillion sounds like it's such a big number. But let's take a look at what does that mean. The balance sheet of the ECB is what? It's about 3 trillion right now. So expanding it by 1 trillion euros doesn't sound like it's a lot, right? I mean, after all, you look at the US and they've expanded their balance sheet by a lot more than €1 trillion. Okay? Remember your QE1, QE2, QE3, add them all up, and you're talking about something around 2 trillion euro, 2 trillion, $2 to $3 trillion added. I can't exactly remember how much, but the number seems to be about 2 to 3 trillion from the USN. So what else? Where else? To what now? What other number should we compare your trillion euro desire, trillion euro expansion of the ECB? The eurozone economy as on whole is something in the order of about 16 trillion. So you look at it from that perspective, and it's not a scary figure. It's not. It's a big number, but it's not something that ought to panic the market. But still, what is the implication of expanding the balance sheet? When you expand the balance sheet of a central bank, as we said, you have to print money. Remember, unlike government, which can say, I'm going to tax the income of these people, everyone who works in my country will be taxed. You know, the ECB doesn't make money that way. The ECB makes money by printing money. So that is something that market is actually focused on right now. What will be the breakdown of that 1 trillion printing money desire of Mario Draghi? Would it be going to government, or would it be more of a QE1 type of program? Remember US QE1, 2008? What was QE1 all about? You know that when someone says QE1, the first thing that pops into my mind is US 2008 and which car company borrowed a lot of money? GM. Okay, so that's what that's one of the things that we are looking at. Will the ECB adopt actually the ECB is already expected to do some asset-backed securities purchases. The question is, by how much of that trillion euro desire will they be buying asset-backed securities? Meaning they will be buying potential stock and bond of European firms. Okay. Now, so that's what we're looking at. To what extent? When exactly will they be doing this? Which sectors and which specific countries will they be going into? Of course, the even more interesting part is, will the ECB be bold enough to actually do a full-blown quantitative easing program? Full-blown QE for me means, are you going to do QE2 type quantitative easing or QE3 type quantitative easing? QE2, QE3, that was about the Fed buying the debt of the US government. QE2 started out with a 600 billion purchase of US treasuries by the Fed. Now, here's where a big problem comes in for the ECB. The ECB knows that perhaps when there's cautiousness from businesses, when you provide money for businesses, you provide cheap funding, and yet those businesses are not borrowing, are not expanding, it's a sign of fear. It's a sign of concern about future prospects. So when the private sector is behaving like this, you're left with what? You're left with the need. You're left with the need for an institution to come in, try to use that money that's the ECB wants to provide, and if businesses will not do that, that institution will be government. So that is what will be the big deal for us today. Will the ECB actually say, or will they actually hint that they're not just planning to buy asset-backed securities from private sector, but they're also planning to buy directly the bonds of specific countries? Because if they do this, that's full-blown QE, and that's something which to me would be a good excuse to go look for even more weakness in the euro. Remember, guys, that we have sold off in our euro by quite a lot already over the last few weeks, especially the last 2 weeks. So the question for me is, will the announcement today cause us to think that last week's break of your support around 27.45 has just opened the way for people to start talking 1.2 in the long run? So that's the big question. The ECB says, yes, we will buy government bonds. They confirm this. Then I wouldn't be hesitant about selling my euro further, looking for a run for psychological 25. Couple of weeks from now, talk about getting to 1.2. But if they talk only about asset-backed purchases, asset-backed securities purchases, ABS, if they talk about buying some private sector bonds alone, then perhaps we've already hammered our euro enough already that you could have some buy the rumor, sell the fact reaction from the market. We've already sold it. So maybe we're actually more likely to bounce if there's no talk about a more aggressive bond buying program. If they limit themselves only to private sector debt, only to corporate debt. Okay, would I say euro can bounce? Well, I would say it really depends on what would happen in your ECB announcement. In fact, I would say you really have to wait for the press conference. That way because during the interest rate announcement, you're not going to get the details that you need to figure out how committed is the ECB to printing money, what are they planning to buy. You're only going to get the details of that once the press conference starts. And the press conference is about 45 minutes after the rate decision. So forget about the rate decision. We don't expect any more rate cuts. We're more interested in knowing the breakdown of that 1 trillion euro balance sheet expansion of the Fed, or rather of the ECB. Unfortunately, I won't be around during the press conference anymore. And it's really a bad idea. You know what? I've done this because I'm like I said, I'm from FX instructor, and normally press conference is when I have my class there. And it's really a bad idea to have, for you to listen to someone else while you're listening to the press conference. Better to just stick to the press conference, listen to Mario Draghi. As long as you know what you're looking for. And we're looking for Draghi to tell us details about which bonds is he buying. Will he confirm, in fact, that he's convinced the other members of the ECB Governing Council that they need to increase the balance sheet, that they should be buying government bonds, which the Germans probably would not want. So during these times, as far as the technicals go, I don't give too much importance to it. When you have a catalyst, something that could move the market, the only technicals that I would respect, that I would follow, would be support and resistances. Indicators, even moving averages can be used as can be viewed as a support or resistance level. But even your moving average, I would ignore them during a press conference, during an announcement. Maybe 21-day EMA I will respect. That's a daily level moving average. But intraday moving averages, you're just likely to violate them during the press con. So if there is any pullback, what would be a nice place to look for? And would we actually sell in any bounce? Like I said earlier, it really depends on what we hear as far as the ECB's bond buying program is concerned. If Mario Draghi just reiterates he wants to expand it by €1 trillion, it doesn't say what type of instruments will he be buying, how much of it will be government type securities, how much of it private sector, then I'm not going to get excited with that kind of news. We might actually see your euro bouncing. Remember that you've sold off by quite a lot in your euro, especially from last week, that we haven't quite had a technical pullback, and failure to provide details ought to be an excuse for people to say, oh, let me go up. Let me look for a push above R1 at 2645. Let me rally to 2670. Maybe build things, get started with a move to the 2807 region. So that's what really would have me focused on, what gets said at the press con. If you look at your chart, guys, you actually have your euro in a precarious situation. You already had a weekly close below 2745. You look at this on a monthly scale, and we're talking about, well, you've also closed on a monthly scale below that 2745 area. And that paves the way for a potential for your euro to ease down through your 1.2 region, maybe down to your 1849 area. So we are vulnerable, and specifics coming out of Mario Draghi's mouth later will provide us the necessary excuse for pressing the sell side of euro. If Draghi were to remain vague, then I would say forget it. If Draghi were to remain vague, you're likely to get a nice position squaring move with any break of your earlier highs. So that to me is the key, guys. Now let's look at euro in general. Where is it vulnerable? Against which currency is it vulnerable? The first thing that really kicks into mind, that comes to mind, is your EUR GBP. You've spent the day gaining ground against cable, or we've seen the euro gaining ground against cable, which means that if I look at EUR GBP, what would I see? almost average daily ranges, a follow through move up after getting a hammer. It would be nice to see your euro pound rally to 78.92 and get rejected from there. Highly unlikely. You have 38.2 fib at 78.79 and you have 21-day EMA at 78.61. Let me just look up my overview for euro pound. So just around average daily range. Have some nice resistances. Could definitely use a rejection from those areas. So folks, I look at this and I'm thinking any excuse to dump your euro. Details about when exactly do they start ABS should have me thinking, can I sell my EUR GBP? Can I ease back down to the previous swing lows? It doesn't matter. Well, it's actually good that we're overbought in our intraday charts. Should make it easier to consider going short, especially when you've reached average daily ranges. Of course, no details from Mario Draghi may actually see us push all the way up to 21-day EMA at 78.64. Give us a nice pullback. It's all about Draghi. The rate announcement is in 7 minutes. We don't expect anything new from there, which means that if you do get a further rate cut, that would be a big surprise. So for now, folks, we're 7 minutes away from our key event. Technically, I'm looking at our euro pound and well, we don't really have a good resistance just yet. Would have loved to say, yeah, you know what, that's a sell. All I know is that it's needing average changes, but nothing tells me that it's bearish. Well, let me get back to overview, guys. Let's see where else can we go. Of course, if there's any surprise rate cut, then that further undermines your euro. Where else should we be going? Look at your euro yen. What if there's no talk about expanding, or rather, there are no details about asset-backed securities purchases? If that were the case, I would say, hey, look at your euro yen. You've sold off all the way down to 78.6 retracement. And now you have a developing daily hammer telling you that come next day, you might get a move up. But if the numbers are good, or rather, if the ECB fails to talk about its asset-backed securities purchases then that makes us vulnerable. So guys, we are 5 minutes away from our late decision and press conference. Again, this could turn things around for your euro or dump your euro across the board any further. Turning things around for euro prospects means that I don't get any details at all. All right, folks, any questions, any chart that you'd like us to go into before the actual release? As far as the rate decision is concerned, we don't expect them to do anything about it. We don't expect to see any changes in the rates. They've already said before, which is actually something else. I mean, if they've already said before they're not likely to move rates and yet they still moved it, then I guess to some degree that's argument on how weak things are. Three minutes until our release, folks. But as we said, the key will be the press conference. All right, folks, 3 minutes away. If you have any questions on any other issues about the market, about things in general, I'm always I'm amenable to addressing them. Not necessarily limited to the ECB's plans. Two minutes, folks. This is really an interesting week. You have ECB today, and then tomorrow you're going to have NFP. Imagine if ECB does talk about ABS, buying these private sector bonds, and then you have an NFP that comes out 210,000, right around consensus. That kind of combination could be very explosive. Hey, thank you, Rahul. Let us trade. Well, one way that you can do is you can just straddle the release. I actually use an EA that puts a buy stop, a sell stop, just a couple of seconds before the data gets released. But like I said, it's likely to be a dud right now because we don't expect any changes. It should be out, guys. Let me see. We're hardly moving. Okay, so no changes there as expected. Again, the focus is on what gets said in the press conference. And the things that we watch out for during the press conference, what will Mario Draghi say about TLTRO given its failure? Yeah, it's unchanged, Himashu, and we are not moving because it's as expected. What else do we look at during the press conference? We look at any specifics that will be said about the asset-backed securities purchase program. We look at how does Mario Draghi intend to expand or to implement his desire for a trillion-euro expansion of the balance sheet. We're seeing some action, folks, but this could be just market noise. And in times like this, you really don't want to do anything just because there's market noise. You only want, well, personally, I only want to commit myself to the market when it's clear that there is something new that I have to price in. Otherwise, let me stick to a small one. Well, if we don't hear details about the 1 trillion dream of Mario Draghi, if we don't hear details about how they plan to implement the ABS purchases, the asset-backed securities purchases, then that could be a good excuse to push above your R1 and maybe initiate a buy rumor, sell the fact effect from your euro. We've already done the buy the rumor. We sold our euro believing that in this meeting, the ECB will begin to take action and say we're going to print money. We're going to buy the bonds of different governments. So if we hear something along those lines, then that ought to allow your euro to bounce, because that's something that we've expected already. So guys, nothing happening. Everyone's looking at the press conference. You know what to watch out for during the press conference. Let me just review our charts. How is euro across the board? You definitely are beginning to turn around as far as the euro pound is concerned. Euro yen would really depend on how things turn out. You do appear to have a potential hammer for the day. Let me see how indicators look like in EUR/JPY. Bullish intraday, bearish in your daily picture. Oh, this is nice. Your EUR/JPY has its Bollinger Bands contracting, which means that in 45 minutes, once we break out, could be very interesting, could be very wide. So something to watch out for, folks. Whether you're going to hear a hawkish or dovish Mario Draghi in the meeting, we'd really expect volatility to open up your euro yen. Euro CAD. Well, let's see that. It's been a while since I've taken a look into it. Let me go big picture. Where are we? Big sell-off monthlies. I would say the next key support is all the way down at 34.49. Average range of 91. We've had 71 today. Still room to maneuver. Signal-wise, I'm seeing a new conference of bears develop, but PA has you with a hammer right now. So what do we do? Again, it all boils down to what gets said by Mario Draghi. However, good things, a hawkish ECB would be a good argument for pushing for your 4103 area. Well, we'll have to wait, Rahul. Weaker dollar ahead. Well, you have NFP tomorrow. I won't expect a lot of weakness for the greenback, given that we are projecting a bounce in NFPs. They go back above 200, and people will say last month's disappointment was a fluke. And you've got argument then to see your dollar strengthening. So guys, EuroCAD, technically, this is a buy for us. It would be best to wait for Draghi to disappoint the market. How will Draghi disappoint? By not giving us details on the type of securities that will be bought with this ABS program. Alrighty guys, let me get back to overview. So I guess there's really little action, and people are conserving their bullets for the press conference, and also you've got the NFPs tomorrow to watch out for. For me, if we get to hear details about how Mario Draghi plans to spend his additional 1 trillion in the balance sheet, that's a good sign of willingness to act. And we'll be talking about having our euro sell further at that point. I'd be looking at using a push below pivot at 26.15 as an excuse for a bear market. All right, guys. Any comments, questions at all? So I'm sorry, but we're hardly moving. Not much happening. All waiting for the press con. You know what to watch out for? Details of the trillion euro expansion in the balance sheet. Remember that if they give us details of that, that would be a nice excuse to go look for your 1.2 area, at least your 2500 in the coming week, if we have details which states a willingness to butt heads with the Germans about how to use money. All right, guys. No questions at all? Nothing anymore? Did I miss anything? Looks like I didn't. So folks, if you have no more questions, I guess I'll be signing off at this point. And I'll see you next week. I'll actually be doing a webinar then. See you next week, folks.